Hey, I'm Ryan. I'm 55 years old and I'm sitting in Cebu, Philippines right now, newly retired. And I want to share something with you about the FIRE movement, Financial Independence Retire Early. It took me about 10 years of trial and error to figure this out, but there is a version of the FIRE movement that works significantly better, and almost nobody in the FIRE community is talking about it. So before we get into it, I want to share that at the end of my career recently, I was making about $150,000 a year. But I didn't get there overnight. It actually took me about 7 or 8 years of grinding away to get there. But it's not so much about that income, because I know plenty of people at my old job who make well over $150,000 a year, and they're going to be working and not retiring until they are 70 years or beyond. So it's not about the income. It's actually about cost optimization and structuring your life to keep costs low. And that's what I want to talk about today. So let's get into that. $2 to $5 million to actually retire comfortably. And that big of a number actually makes people give up early or not even start trying in the first place. But the reality is you do not have to retire in the United States of America, and you do not, absolutely not, need between $2 and $5 million of assets or investments in order to retire. There's absolutely a better way to frame the entire problem or the question. So let me share my story because I think it may help. Back up about 10 years, I was self-employed. I owed the IRS about $60,000 in back income taxes from being self-employed, and I had over $30,000 in unpaid child support. Trust me, I was working my butt off and I was doing everything I could, but it just wasn't enough. So I was in serious debt and I had a problem, and I knew that. And it caused me to step back and take a serious look at my life and how I was living it, how many years I had left to go in my potential career, and how I was spending my money and mismanaging my money. And I came to a hard decision, and that was if I did not get my monthly expenses down, seriously down, much lower, I would not be able to retire ever. I would not be able to make up the back child support. I would continue to be in trouble with the IRS. And quite frankly, all of that felt horrible. So I did what any honest, hardworking person who cares about paying off their debts would do. I decided that I would have to radically change my life. And the big decision that I engaged in was to get my living expenses down to absolute rock bottom. So what I did is with the help of my mom, thanks Mom, I bought a utility trailer and I built a 25-foot tiny house on top of it, scraping together what dimes and nickels I could and salvage material to make that happen. Now, let's be clear. It is not the ownership of a tiny house that is the linchpin or that you can use as an excuse to not do what I'm about to advise you. You can do this with an RV, with a camper van, with a shed, with a tent on a piece of land. But my guidance is, and what worked for me very well, is that I got my monthly rent costs down to about $500 a month. I then pursued a career in IT. I was already in IT, but I decided when I got back into it, after being self-employed, to pursue cybersecurity. So that's sort of phase two, was pursuing a career that I thought had good job security and that would pay reasonably well. And then I studied and studied and studied and obtained certifications in cybersecurity and got certified basically as a professional in that field. And that was the start of 8 more years of grinding hard, being frugal, saving every possible penny I could, spending as little as possible on restaurants and groceries and any fun, to be honest with you. I had a little bit here and there, but my focus was on getting out of debt, getting the IRS paid back, making good on my child support obligations, which I'm very proud of the fact that I did. I got that paid back. I got the IRS paid back. I got my truck paid off. And the secret to all of this is getting your living expenses down and grinding away the best you can to save every penny possible. Now, another big secret to why this fire thing worked, in addition to being frugal, is that I had a vision for my life. And let me share with you something that I told my sister recently, who is not yet retired, but she is older than me. And my advice to her and my advice to you is the same, and it's this. If you do not have a burning desire to stop working, to not be a slave to someone else's business or schedule or time or priorities, if you do not want retirement with every fiber of your being, you will not have the discipline or the will and implement the cost structure necessary to get out of debt, to get your living expenses low, and start building up your savings and investments to make it happen. So that is absolutely key. Let's assume that you have that fire. Let's say that you are highly motivated, that you want to get retired ASAP. Once you make changes in your life to get your cost structure down, to get your rent to like $500, as Dave Ramsey said, eating beans and rice for a while and living in a crappy apartment on the wrong side of the railroad tracks, if you want to get retired, that's probably what you need to do. But once you have established that you're willing to do that, you have to then invest, and invest heavily every dime that you can. So that's what I did. I started investing primarily through my employer's program, who had a decent matching offer. So I took full advantage of that, and I maxed out my for about 6 years straight. It took a while to build up to that, but eventually I got there. The other major thing I did with my extra money from my take-home paycheck is I decided to do some Hail Mary plays, and I investigated Bitcoin and crypto. And I invested a little bit in Bitcoin. It was not easy, it was not cheap, it felt foolish, but I knew if I wanted to grow my money rapidly enough to have an impact so that I could retire within the next 5 to 7 years from starting that, I needed to take some chances. So I'm not telling you to invest in Bitcoin, and I don't give financial advice, but of all the investable assets out there, you need to take some calculated risks, not with all of your money, but with some of it, and invest in things that have high growth potential. Honestly, right now, that seems to be companies like Tesla, Nvidia, and AI-related stocks, because that's where the trend seems to be. So my point is, you've got to be frugal. You have to live cheap. You have to be willing to invest. You have to invest consistently in relatively safe bets like your employer's 401k program, and you should probably take a sliver, at least a sliver, of your investable income and put it into some higher risk plays that stand a reasonable chance of high growth over 4, 5, 6 years. And if you get that right, it can absolutely make a meaningful difference. Then the final nail in the coffin that allowed me to do this in 10 years, to go from pretty much broke and in debt, negative net worth, to financially independent and retired, is making the decision to retire overseas, to do geoarbitrage, which means you take your US dollars that you've saved up, you get the heck out of the United States, and you find some place overseas, whether it's in Southeast Asia, Colombia, Dominican Republic, Costa Rica, El Salvador. There's no shortage of countries that have much cheaper cost of living, and you can 5x and 6x every US dollar that you have. So instead of needing $2 to $5 million, you can actually, especially if you have Social Security waiting for you eventually, do it with 2, 3, maybe 400,000 US dollars. If you can sock away $200,000 or $300,000 and eventually you'll qualify for Social Security, then you can retire early overseas. So that is the 4 to 5 big secrets that I use to make the FIRE movement work for me. It wasn't fun, it wasn't exactly easy, but the time went by quickly. I wasn't hating my life, and it feels good to build up savings. It feels good to get out of debt, and it feels good to make the sacrifices that you know are going to pay off in the future and give you a relaxed, cool, chill, fun retirement lifestyle, which I now am going into, finding the perfect place to live, watching my pennies still, following a budget, but I'm going to spend my money in ways that are fun and enjoyable, and I would rather retire early outside of the United States where my money goes further than to try to grind away for another 10 or 20 years, saving up $5 million, which is pretty much impossible, even at a $150,000 salary. That's just not going to work. That's just not a method. So for me, the right amount to have invested so that I could retire was about $500,000. And the reason that worked is because if you take the traditional 4% rule on $500,000, that gives you about $1,677 per month. Now, that does not go anywhere pretty much in the United States, but that goes real far in Southeast Asia. So that's where the FIRE movement and the Retire Overseas movement need to realize that they are allies and should be on the same page. 1,677, you can live pretty well in many parts of the world, but not in the US. So for me, the right number was $500,000 and a passport. And that's where the FIRE movement and the Retire Overseas expat community can come together and both achieve their goals by following the approach that I just outlined. So the retiring overseas is basically a cheat code. It is a life hack. So you do not need $150,000 a year salary. Yes, get as good a salary as you can get your hands on through working hard, but it doesn't have to be $150,000 a year. Just get your cost structure down and plan to retire overseas and do everything you need to do to pull that off and make it happen. So I've discovered what does work, and I would really love it if you took my advice and just find your passion, find that fire for being retired. Then commit to getting your living expenses way down, get that cost structure optimized, and then once you have that, then focus on your income. And please don't make the mistake of thinking that you need a $150,000 a year salary or more to make it happen. And please don't think that you need a tiny house. Find your own version of the tiny house. That was just my way of cost optimizing, of getting that rent expense down to $500 a month. For you, it could just be living in an apartment with a roommate in a not so great part of town. For some of you who have the right type of vehicle, it could mean taking a few years of sleeping in your vehicle. YouTube is full of videos about people who are doing that very thing, living out of vans, RVs, or even in their Tesla to save money. You can do it. You just have to find your own approach. And if you really put time and effort into studying what the right investments are for you, given your particular risk appetite, you'll find the investments, you'll make the investments, and I pray that they pay off for you in the way that they did for me, and then you'll be well on the way. So that's my secret to making the FIRE movement work for me. If there's any of that you'd like for me to go deeper on, I'm happy to do it. My mission now in retirement is to help as many people as possible have the same success and to get over here to the Philippines or Thailand or Vietnam, wherever I end up, and do the same thing along with me. So thanks for watching the video, and I'll see you in the next one. So long.